Those who are watching, you can hear clearly. Just send us a message if everything is clear at your end.
All right. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. Sorry for the delay in getting started. As we're now living in this virtual world, unfortunately, sometimes we can't avoid the occasional technical issue. Appreciate everyone's patience. Inshallah, we're about to begin. I want to first welcome our guest this evening. From Dearborn, Detroit, we have Hajj Hassanain Rajabali and Hajj Hussein Charara, who are together at the Weiss Center in Dearborn. We also have Sister Berak Hussain, who's joining us from Toronto. So,
Ottawa.
again, Assalamu alaikum, welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. This pandemic obviously been stressful for all of us, every individual, all our communities across the world. I mean, the whole world pretty much has shut down. And it's been difficult for many. In addition to the fear and risk of the disease itself, we've all been kind of having put through this voluntary, or in some cases mandatory, isolation. We all have to either stay home. We're practicing this social distancing. In some cases, again, the states, counties, governments are forcing us to, again, not even go out. And again, that's for our own protection. And of course, we need to listen to this advice from the professionals. But with these mosque closures and school closures, the changing circumstances with our jobs, our businesses, this is taking a toll on us spiritually and mentally. And this session today is really to kind of come together and kind of address the issues that each of us are facing, both spiritually and from a mental health. Again, in some cases, there are some connections between spirituality and mental health, and as well, there are areas where they differ. So today, with the panel that we have, hopefully we can address many of your concerns. We're going to be taking questions, as you know, through Menti. We did put that out on the flyer that we posted, and as well, we'll try to get this up on the screen here too for everyone to see where to submit your questions. And I see some questions have started coming in. But as we go through, and really it's a discussion today. If a topic comes up, you have a question, please ask. This is what this forum is for. We promise to keep open communication channels through this time, this difficult period. So that's what we're here to do, is to talk through. So one of the first questions that we have is really around, this is not the first time we've seen anything like this in the history of mankind. What guidance has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala given us throughout the course of history, examples that we can take, or some guidance that we should be following during this time? So Hajj Hassanain, I'll start and maybe have you take that first question.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, Allah has given us this existence, and it's a blessing, and we must recognize it. And the trials that we go through, besides this pandemic, day to day, there's not a single human being on earth who doesn't go through trials, either daily, weekly, or for most of their lives. And trials are designed for us to appreciate what Allah has given us. So the fundamental question that everybody asks is, where are we going with this? How do we deal with this? What does Allah say to us with regards to this? And as we did the previous podcast, we discussed that we should account for the gifts that Allah has given us, and know that the imminent loss that is within our existence, the existential system demands loss, because loss actually makes us value the gains. So the question you're asking, Brother Amin, with reference to the, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us? You will notice that the Quran is rich with warnings. Ittaqillah. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم واخشوا يوما لا يجزي والد عن ولده. all mankind, beware of that day when your parents will not help you on that day, right? And the Quran is constantly saying, ittaqillah. Ittaqillah means be conscious, be God conscious, be aware, know the values, avoid the dangers, the imminent dangers of life. And many a times God is so merciful that He has enhanced us with what we call automated systems that protects us. For example, the pH levels of our skin. If you look at our inner immune system in our body, it's automated. So when we do get any kind of antigens that attack us, the immune system takes, it starts moving, and we don't have to think about it. So if you look at the human gregarious nature, we're very touchy, we're very social, but we're also, many a times we don't practice cleanliness. We don't practice good hygiene. We have pathogens that are constantly within us and around us. We're basically swimming in a pool of bacteria, for example. But God is so merciful that He has built immune systems to guard us and protect us from that. Now, sometimes, of course, we get those kinds of pathogens that may not necessarily be so easy to prevent, or at least the antibodies in our bodies haven't formed yet. As a result, the dangers increase. So I believe that what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is constantly letting us know is never let your guards down, always be vigilant, always be diligent. The classic question people ask is, why do Muslims pray 5 times a day? What's the use of praying 5 times a day? Many youth come and ask me that question. Why do we need to pray 5 times a day? The question many people ask is loaded with the idea that what's the need for it when things are working so well? Let's indulge in prayer when we're in trouble. Why bother with prayer when things are going okay? So the nature of what God has put in us is that things don't have to go wrong for us to indulge in vigilance and diligence and to be careful about how our day-to-day activities are. And it's such a blessing that, we ask the question, why wudu? Many kids come and ask me, even adults, that look, I just took a shower, I'm clean. Why do I need to do wudu before I approach prayers? Even I just took a shower, but I still need to do wudu. Why do I need to do wudu if I'm already clean? Isn't cleanliness the objective of praying to God? Why does one have to do this special ablution by which to be considered proper to pray? And you notice that there's a protocol in Islam that not only is that extra step of wudu an indicator that now you have focused to talk to God, but the what we call the collateral benefits that come with it is hygiene, it's cleanliness. And we wash our hands, we wash our face. And by the way, even psychologists and researchers have done studies that just washing your hands makes you forget the lie that you heard. The latest lie that you hear, it actually makes you forget it. It cools you down, it calms you down, it changes your state. Just like the Holy Prophet ﷺ, he said, if you're angry and you're sitting, stand up. If you're standing, sit down or lie on your side. Change your state. And why are all these injunctions placed upon us, or recommendations for us? The mustahabbat, meaning the extrarogatory prayers, the wajibat, the essential prayers, is because God wants us to be vigilant to maintain a healthy physical as well as a spiritual lifestyle.
And I think that's the issue. Right now, we're in a current state where everybody's living in fear and anxiety. And if you want to see if somebody's personality and somebody's reality, you just see what state that they're in. And we know nothing destroys more the immune system, because right now the topic is our immune system. How is it going to react if we get the coronavirus? And nothing destroys the immune system than our negative thoughts. Because if we know that our thoughts can make us sick, which deregulates genes, which cause cancer and disease, can our thoughts make us well? And thus, the Holy Quran, our prayers, everything is there to making sure to put our state in a certain level, to making sure that we're looking towards something in the future, not living in the past. And most of us wake up to the same thoughts as yesterday. We're waking up to CNN and waking up to Fox News and seeing what the new reports are. And we're scared now to even go outside. And I'm sure there are people who have became sick through the coronavirus fear, and they've never even come across it. Because we know, one of my biggest changes in life was when we interviewed one of our students, and the father said, I was going to die. And I said, how? He says, well, I had meningitis. And I prayed to Abu Fadl Abbas, and then something came over me, and the doctor said I was going to die. I had 2 weeks to live. And then I healed. And the doctors kept me in the hospital for about 2 to 3 months, he said, picking and prodding, saying, how did you heal from this? We've never seen this before. And he says, well, you don't know my Lord. And then the nurse commented and told him, well, somebody's same story said the same thing a month ago and was healed the same way. So we know our thoughts can make us sick, but we definitely know our thoughts could cure us and heal us. And thus the power of the reason why we pray, why we recite dua and so on, is just to get us from that state of fear and get us in that state of dhikr and hope and remove fear and replace it for faith. We have this coronavirus where people are so fearful. I said, what about the fear of driving your car? 3,000 people die every day driving cars, either texting or drunk drivers or whatever.
Plane crash.
Or plane crash. But we don't stop that, but we take precaution. But if we're over precautious through the state of fear and anxiety, then actually corona will hit us without even it coming across us in the physical form.
And the Quran even states, those who were told to go and fight in the battle, they said, oh, our lives are in danger. Allah says, how do you know you won't die in your houses?
Right.
Quran says, you think that by going to battle you will die. You may die in your homes. So the imminent nature of death, kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut, is something that we have to take into account. Sister Berak, why don't you join us, please, and make some comments?
I've been fascinated listening to what you're saying, and I can reiterate what you both said in terms of clinical experience, and just recently my clients and patients that I've connected with virtually. By the way, we've all moved our medical clinic at the campus where I work at virtually. So even the doctors are doing virtual sessions with our patients, and I hear this a lot from folks who are fearful and terrified, at the same time lonely, and I'm sure we're going to get to that in a few minutes. But it was so interesting, and just the articles that my colleagues and I were sending to each other and reading and just educating ourselves on this also, because this is all new. We are all learning how to adapt and adjust to this new norm. I think the last 2 weeks, it just finally hit us here in North America in terms of us thinking, oh, this is actually happening now. And it's almost in the stages of grief that we're dealing with something here. That the first part, you're in denial. I think we've been in denial the last few weeks, but I think now we're at the point where we're realizing, we are actually stuck at home. We can't really leave. Some places are in lockdown. We haven't gotten that yet here in Ottawa, but we're definitely in a state of emergency in our whole province. So, and people are practicing, I don't like using the word social distancing because we don't want to be socially distant from people, but physical distancing. I think it's a good way to reframe it that way or reword it. Excuse me. Let me cough correctly and I'll demonstrate through here. In any case, this idea of fear, you're propagating what you're feeling. And we have that beautiful saying of the Prophet where it says, Tafa'alu bil khair tajidu, and I use that a lot when we talk about positive psychology and just mental health and wellness in general, right? So if you propagate that good thought, that good energy, you will find it. And so if we're propagating this fear of the unknown, we don't know what's going to happen, it's going to just amplify our anxiety. And if you, like my brothers were saying here, if you don't have the illness, you're going to lower your immunity with the stress levels and the cortisol levels that are just rising in your body because you're not eating well. Perhaps you're definitely not hitting the gym like you used to because the gyms are closed, right? Your sleep schedule is completely off, perhaps. I know these are the common things that we're dealing with these days, but we were dealing with this before anyways, those of us who are stressed, and we always talk about, all right, let's put these things back in balance, right? And the idea of control here. You don't have control of what's happening around you, right? The locus of control here is definitely not in your hands. When that fear and that lack of control is there, right? Then becomes even more amplified. So we want to take control over the things that we do have control over. So again, with the stages of grief, the first part is the denial part. Perhaps now we're going to be moving towards the angry part in terms of, Corona has not allowed me to do my Jama'ah prayer. We've missed out on the Mawalid the last few days. We're getting frustrated and angry. We haven't been over to families' homes and gatherings, and Ramadan is coming up just around the corner. Perhaps there's an anger towards that and frustration as well, that we're not going to be able to honor the holy month the same way that we always do. So what happens here, again, you're putting the locus of control outside of that circle. You want to bring it back to what you can do, lowering your stress levels that way, right? And so when you do that, alhamdulillah, you're creating that energy of calmness. You're propagating positive energy. You're also creating that atmosphere in the home where your kids are observing your behavior, right?
Mm.
So a lot of folks are saying, well, how are you managing? What do you do at home? Inshallah, throughout this discussion, we'll get to much more. So I was just giving a little bit of a clinical touch here to what the Hajjs were saying.
When you talked about cortisol levels, we know when you complain, cortisol levels shoot up. And even if you're around people who complain, your cortisol levels shoot up. So when that happens, it creates Alzheimer's disease, heart attacks, all different types of stuff, destroys the body. So if you're listening to CNN or you have friends and every day they're complaining, well, I lost my job, I have a family and, I'm having so many people call me through despair that they're actually almost suicidal. I just lost my job. I'm here with nothing. What do I do? And what do we focus on this is why we've never lost a suicide cases, because we just changed their state and really look at this as an opportunity to take pause. Say, okay, you've lost everything. Your certainty was in your job or living in America or in Canada. And you weren't able to empathize with the people in Syria. But now it's the same, where you have to also wait for toilet paper and wait in line. Now what are you going to do about it? Where is your true certainty? And also to take reflection on how can you change your life? Were you excited every day waking up before this? Most people, I realize, are just not excited about their day because it's the same as yesterday. It's like watching the same movie over and over and over again. Nothing to be excited. Now there's a shift God has put us through. And he's saying, okay, now what? What are we going to do? Well, if you didn't like your job, if you didn't like certain things, you take pause and say, what can I change about myself? How can I have more of a passive income where money works for me instead of me working for money? What can I do to change my behavior? How can I be a little bit more grateful? Because in the Quran, the solution is when Musa freed the people through the sea of Pharaoh's army, they complained right after. And they said, we don't have any food or water, what do we do? And Musa had to give a khutbah saying, we just freed you. Your children were being killed, thrown in the river. What are you now complaining? Learn how to be grateful over some past accomplishment, and God will get you through this the same way he's gotten you through in past. And I think if we just pause and say, what is it about my life that I need to change? Because I have an opportunity now. Instead of complain, because we know when you complain, you remain. And your past now that you complained about will be your predictable future. And unless you take this time to pause and reflect, because we know your immune system shoots way up when you meditate just for 4 days of reflecting, of dhikr, where you're able to think greater than the way you feel. And this is a great opportunity. I honestly see that. And there's a lot of people helping. If there's a lot of people in need, and there's so many people willing to give. So there's so many opportunities to give too.
See, I think in this period, you will find that when things go down, to use that metaphor, the stock market goes down, prices go down, income drops. If you think about it, inflation is quite on the opposite end. When income goes up and expenses go up, you'll find the inflation rates go up. And it becomes even harder to keep up with the Joneses because the price of real estate goes up. You have this little depression that comes in and there's this fear, oh, I'm losing value. What you're forgetting is everybody's losing value. So it's all equalized anyway. The differential is that the stress levels are less. If we understand opportunities, you'll find people like Warren Buffett always says, buy low, sell high. Well, how do you buy low if there is no moment of that deflation? So when we look at value systems, you look at human value. When we look at how easily a person can die within a few days once they get infected with the COVID virus, you find that suddenly we start to value each other. We start to understand that, hey, I need to be careful about making sure that we're all keeping healthy. We pray for each other. We put signs up. We get annoyed when somebody wants to harm somebody, just like that Amazon delivery man, who spat on the box. You would think about, why would you do such a thing unless your life is in such a negative trajectory? Why would you do that? Why would you deliver a package to make sure? And I've watched videos of people taking saliva and putting it on the car doors or whatever. Then the idea is to just go out there and cause more damage, right? And so in other words, those kinds of people are looking at further destruction. They're not satisfied. They're angry, and they see the glasses half empty, and now they're working extra hard to empty the rest of the glass.
And that's their way of, sorry, Hajj, and that's their way of taking control, right?
Exactly. It's their way of contributing. Exactly. So control, if you look at evildoers, evil leaders like Yazid, they took control, but in destructive ways, right? And of course, Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu alaykum anfusakum. Or you believe, take care of yourselves. We are in control. It is the destiny lies in our hands. يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. Qalbin Salim means God is saying you're in control. The outer universe that's besides yourself is peripheral to you. You will be questioned on Judgment Day, not for the outside universe. You will be questioned. Allah says, "Iqra kitabaka kafa bi nafsik." Read the book that is on you. So taking control in a positive way, you find opportunities, and you say, okay, so people are suffering now. What can I do? Like there's a brother in Sydney, for example, who runs a chicken shop. Right, and he's feeding thousands of people every day. They shut the place down, brought in tons and tons of rice, and now every single day he's feeding people, right? And he's all over the news. And what's beautiful about that is the one who sees the glasses half empty says, "Oh my God, you're giving up that critical resource, which could be your last drop of food that you will need to survive." Whereas this brother, who is very altruistic, very philanthropic, has trust in Allah. وَعَلَىٰ رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ. They have tawakkal on Allah. They know God is the provider. So it's an opportunity, you see? And I think this conversation should be to say, how do we find opportunities? And how do we capitalize on opportunities? Because growth, not only materially, but spiritually, demands opportunities. Right, so you have to have an opportunity to be able to reap the benefits of the gifts of Allah.
And you got to be willing to give something up. Do you have a threshold when you lose something or something happens? Even us, we'll probably lose $1 million to $2 million just through the coronavirus, through the programs that we run. I mean, even last year we had our power run out at the camp. We had 300 kids, families coming in. And we had no water.
There was a storm,
and there was a huge storm.
All the power was
out. So what did we do? We decided to take everybody on a field trip for a day, and we moved them out of the community. But by the time we came back, the power on. So I believe it's what you do with this. Like Umar ibn Saad didn't hate Imam Hussein. He didn't hate Ahl Bayt. He had a love, a pure desire for this world. When he met with Imam Hussein 3-4 days before the 10th, and Imam Hussein would talk to him every day and say, okay, just do this. And he, at the 10th or the 9th day, Imam Hussein says, why don't you give this up? He says, I was promised something. I was promised governorship.
Right.
And he said, and Imam Hussein responded, he says, give it up and you'll get more. See, most of us feel despair because we lost something, we lost our job, we lost financial security. Allah says, give that up. There's a reason why you lost that, because all setbacks are set up for something bigger. And Umar ibn Saad said, I can't. He says, Imam Hussein responded, he says, you won't even eat the wheat in from trying to be a governor. Give it up. Allah is telling us, just take pause and watch what happens. You know, there's a famous fable where two people were in a competition to cut down trees, and they had 8 hours, and they started, and every 45 minutes, one person's saw stopped. He stopped hearing the noise. So the other person said, I'm going to go even harder. So every 45 minutes, there was a pause. Then at the end, they're counting trees. He says, I must have won. I kept hearing you pause. And he found the person that paused cut twice as many trees. He said, how is this possible? He says, I paused to sharpen my axe. I said, this is an opportunity for us to sharpen our axe. If our marriage isn't going straight, this is an opportunity to spend a lot of time with your wife. If your relationship with your kids, it's a lot of time to spend with your children. Your job, you don't like it. There's the next Uber idea in someone. There's the next book to be written. Somebody needs to quit their job to have a better job. Or maybe start a next YouTube video or start the next, Instagram page. There's so many teachers that I haven't hired because they had a marketing company on Facebook or Instagram as a side job. So spend full time and watch what happens. A year later, they would come to me and say, it was the best thing you did is didn't hire me. These are the opportunities that I get.
There's a nice, forward that's going out. It's really nice. It says, traffic is gone, long queues are gone. Gas is affordable, bills are extended. Kids are at home and with their families. Parents are home taking care of their children. Fast food replaced by home-cooked meals.
Yes.
Hectic schedule replaced by naps. The air seems cleaner. The world is quieter. People are conscious about hygiene and health again.
Yes.
We finally listen to authorities. Money doesn't seem to make the world go around anymore. And we have time. So let's stop and smell the...
and that's not to be dismissive to people who are suffering. Reach out. There's so many people willing to help. Let's be honest, 3 billion people live on $2.50 a day. And when you go to those third world countries and you talk to them, you say, I'm working for 30 years to retire so I could be on the beach. And the person says, I'm already on the beach. I'm already happy. What are you working for? And how are you so certain that that's going to come in 30 years? And I think if we just practicalize and be grateful for the things that we have. Imagine you go to Haiti and say, my Wi-Fi is out, or I lost my job, or something. And the person says, you have a job? You have clean socks? You have a bathroom in your house of clean water? We lost, but we don't suffer at all compared to what's happening in Yemen, Syria, and Palestine. That's suffering. But Imam Hussein went through a lot. But at the end of the day, it's what we do in that state, our threshold of tolerance, that will really value us and understand where we could really take our existence.
And a lot of people these days are talking about being bored out of their mind. And so this, when you mention that, brother, in terms of what's happening in those other countries who are truly suffering, we're not negating or invalidating what you're experiencing. But absolutely. But at the same time, we have to put things into perspective and larger picture here. You're bored at home, or you're arguing at home with family, or whatever the case may be. You have a home, you have shelter, you have protection. Your government is protecting you by saying, don't go outside. These other countries are being bombed, they're being attacked, they're being killed, they're being raped, they're being, again, sorry, I don't want to say all the negative things, but let's put things into perspective in terms of being grateful for what we do have while we are on lockdown, while we are experiencing the pandemic very differently than others. And you mentioned opportunity. So in therapy, we use this a lot in basic cognitive behavioral therapy, where people who come in with struggles and issues, we take the problem, reframe it, and make it an opportunity.
Exactly.
Whatever the challenge is, take it, reframe, opportunity. But this comes with acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean you have to like it.
Right.
From a spiritual perspective, as you were saying, acceptance is from him, right? And it comes with this ayah that we know very well in the Quran. We may use it very loosely, but I think it's so valid here. Asa an takrahuna shay'an wa huwa khayrun lakum. Look at the beautiful reframe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us here. You may hate, you may dislike what's happening to you here, but it is good for you. And so when we apply reframe here, it is so incredible to accept that and say, all right, you know what? I'm going to trust in God just like he tells me. And again, I use that in therapy sometimes, depending on the client, of course. Some are not Muslim, some don't use faith, but even folks of different faith, they connect with this idea leave it up to him, leave it up to the universe. Just take this, leave it up to him, give it to him, and use it in prayer. At the same time, you lift it up. You're also easing a lot of stress and anxiety when you put your trust into the universe, into what is supposed to happen, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Focus on the now, like the brother was saying. This has not always been the case before. This will not always be the case, whatever situation, but especially right now for us, living in the moment right now. And what we have right now is an opportunity, truly an opportunity to develop ourselves internally, especially with the holy months right now. We have the time, like the Hajj was saying, you have the time and opportunity right now to develop so many things that we just didn't have the time to do before. You have the time to connect with families in a different way. Now, we also have to acknowledge that a lot of folks would leave the home getting away from violent situations, abusive situations. And we know that's happening still. And the concern has
Even
been very
worse.
real. It is. And so for those people who are experiencing this, there are still supports out in the community. I'm speaking on behalf of my city here. I'm not sure what's happening in Dearborn and in Allentown, but supports are still available for people to use, to call crisis hotlines, excuse me, shelters, police, and all of that, and to use online supports as well for counseling, so that those are not shut down or locked down. They are still available. They are part of essential services, frontline workers. So for those people who are experiencing, and if you are watching right now, please do reach out to us so we can also connect you with the appropriate resources. So although we're saying this is an opportunity to connect with family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, we also cannot ignore the fact that people could be living with abusers at home, and they were getting away from that as well. People are also going to work and school, and they had food there. That may not be the case at home as well. And like the Hajj was saying, there's incredible people, like the folks in Australia who I know very well as well, Hajj, and incredible people, mashallah. And people here in Ottawa as well, where we have folks who are preparing for Ramadan, but even helping people right now. We're seeing our nature really magnified. If you're good, you're incredibly good right now. If you're bad and psychopathic, like those people licking and touching the cars, and we've seen the footage of that as well, or if you're sadistic or psychopathic, this nature is amplified as well. There's something in chaos, subhanAllah, that brings out the good in the good, and the nasty and the nasty even worse, subhanAllah. So how do you
and in this difficulty, if you see like you yourself, for example, doing what you do to help others, this is a great opportunity, because now that closed environment where that level of violence may go a little bit higher may be the reason for the solution now. Because sometimes there's just that much amount of violence that perpetuates for a long period of time. And sometimes, having these kinds of scenarios where the opportunities are knocking for us, for those of us that can help, given the fact that we are also struggling within our own lives to survive, I believe that the net result at the end of this pandemic, inshallah, will be that less people, inshallah, will be violated. Less people will be abused. Because the good people on earth, if they do more good, then evil will subside. Many times we're so busy chasing in the rat race, in a world of, no time, I have no time, I need to build my little empire, that we forget all these problems that do exist, drug abuse, domestic violence, and so on. And we need to focus on that. Just like in Ramadan, we become more giving, for the hungry, right? So inshallah, this will be a great opportunity for us. But one more point I want to make is that, remember you said reframing. I think that's brilliant, what you do in your professional life. Just reframing things, because everything is about perceptions. Somebody can be very adamant against an idea, and they will vow that they will never change that position. But if you reframe it, you'll be amazed how they will accept it and embrace it, right? And I think the bigger reframing that we all need to have is, if you look at right now, for example, people are binging in Netflix, right? It's their way of escaping. All these movies, right? Movie after movie after movie, inshallah. People are watching good movies and not bad movies. But the point is, what is the typical theme in a movie, right? Hollywood, Bollywood, they all create these very interesting themes. Either the movie starts in a terrible situation where you have this tyrant killing people, right? So that's the problem. So the movie shows you the problem. Then it shows you the hope. Like there is a good person, a child was just born, right? Oh, that's hope. Okay, maybe this child will be the one who will rise and who will now stop that tyrant from doing the evils, right? So there's that hope. And then you have the solution to the problem, right? And then once the problem is solved, it's either the end of the movie, or if it's a series, then you're wondering, okay, so this was solved. This was really getting on my nerves. And I was wondering how these soldiers or this family or this person was going to solve this problem. And you're biting your nails. And they typically, you notice they'll exaggerate that split moment of the problem. And then, it'll be the end of the series, right? It'll be the end of that particular episode. So now you have to click on the next one because you're very eager to know, how was this problem solved? What happened? What did they say?
It's an addiction.
Right? Yeah. It's an addiction. So now what's interesting is, imagine if Hollywood, Bollywood, and all these Netflix movie makers removed these problems and made everything just lovely. The couples got married, everything's just lovely, they're laughing, the kids are born, no disease, no problem. Who would watch any movies? It would be so predictable, it would be so boring. Like, okay, what's the problem? There's no hero here, there's no solution to the problem. The world has no problem. And you'll find the entire industry will collapse. You'll notice that very good movie writers constantly create twists and turns in life, and that's what makes things so exciting. Of course, while we watch movies, we're all hopeful that the end of the movie will pretty much solve most of the problems. They will live happily ever after. But let's take that scenario where we are all addicted to it and take that same paradigm and apply it to our day-to-day lives, then we have a problem today, right? And if we now engage ourselves in this grand scheme of things and say, okay, that's a problem, and now we have to figure out how to solve this problem, it's just as exciting as watching a movie.
So, Hussein, there's actually a question here from the audience here that's listening. What are some good habits to perform in this time period?
Well,
What are some of the
good habits.
Good habits to perform in this time period.
I want to just add on a little bit to Hajj and try to answer that. And Hajj, you could add as well. Hajj talked about movies and becoming a hero. But if you looked at the Prophet of Islam, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, all these people we consider heroes, what is something they all had the same quality? They all had a vision that was greater than themselves, that nobody else saw, that they said was unrealistic. So what are the people now doing in terms of creating habits to have something what people would deem as unrealistic? That's where we teach people. It's in the Quran, so many where you give an intention towards something greater than yourself, and you give an elevated emotion of how it would feel when you achieve it. You have something great you're going after. And how will it feel? And you train your body, how that feeling through meditation and prayer. So that, for instance, there was a sister who came and she failed the state exam 3 times. And she said, I don't know what to do. I said, well, give it an intention. I said, what do you need to get? She goes, I have to give at least a 70. So we're going to give you an intention, 78. So focus on that. Here's a special dhikr, you do a special prayer. And how will it feel when you pass? She says, it's going to feel great. I said, meditate as if you've already done it. Because your body doesn't know the difference between a thought and the reality out there. So the next day she gets a text. I get a text. Brother Hussein, you won't believe what happened. I passed. Guess what she got? 78. And I believe if people learn the habit of manifesting through mental rehearsal, where you put attention towards something that you want, that's greater than you, and you see through good habits, because what's a habit? A habit is something that you do over and over that your mind isn't doing. It's your subconscious, like tying your shoe or brushing your teeth. But most of us have bad habits because we do the same habits as yesterday. So if you truly believe your thoughts have something to do with your future, how many of us have the habit of thinking about what we think about before we start our day through prayer and meditation? If we truly believe our thoughts have something to do with our future.
So Allah in the Quran says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ista'inu bis-sabri was-salah, right? Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. So the question, Brother Amin, that you're asking, first and foremost, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ista'inu, okay, bis-sabri was-salah, maintain patience and prayer. Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. Indeed, Allah is with the patient ones. In this period of time, especially, and in all periods of time, when Allah uses the expression that God is with the patient ones, it's much greater in emphasis than when the patient ones are with Allah. Okay, Allah is with the patient ones. The elevation of people who exercise patience are the ultimate human beings in the universe. You know, Imam Hussein alayhi salam was the ultimate example of a patient one. His grandfather Ismail, when his father said, "I have been commanded by God to sacrifice you," he replies, you know, "Satajiduni inshallah minas sabirin. If'al ma tu'mar." Do what you have been commanded. Perchance God will find me among the patient ones. Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. So practice patience, but patience requires long-term vision, requires for one to have confidence in what their long-term vision is built on. Meaning there has to be a level of tawakkul. Okay, you know, wa tawakkal Allah. So Allah says, "Innamal mu'minuna alladhina idha dhukira Allah wajilat qulubuhum wa idha tuliyat alayhim ayatu zadathum imanan wa ala rabbihim yatawakkalun." So when, you know, the believers are those who, when Allah's name is mentioned, their hearts palpitate, meaning they're excited. You know, they become extra conscious. When the verses of the Quran are recited, their faith increases and they have trust in Allah. These are the components of patience. So salah is very important. Maintaining prayer on time, doing dhikr of Allah, not in limited time, for eternity. When you and I talk to Allah, let's not talk to Allah now. Let's talk to Allah without time. There should be no time with Allah. In other words, every conversation is what we say ubiquitous with Allah. So we traverse time. And the minute we do that, we capture eternity. And when you capture eternity in the mind, then your level of patience increases exponentially. But of course, it's a lot of practice, and our ignorance and arrogance that leads us to blurt out statements and anger and comments come in our way, but that's okay. Allah says it's all right. لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله قل يا عبادي الذين أسرفوا على أنفسهم لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله. Say to my believers who've gone astray or who've exceeded their boundaries, don't lose hope in the mercy of God. إن الله يغفر الذنوب جميعا. Indeed, Allah forgives you all. So practice prayer, practice patience. And of course, as you know, in this verse in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah, the next verse, Allah says, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ. So if you continue this verse, the verse is actually validating the value of patience in prayer. You see? We will test you with loss of life, fear, etc., etc. وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. Give good news to the patient ones. Why? Because they have taken into account they're from Allah, they return to Allah. What does Allah say about them? أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَيْهِمْ صَلَوَاتٌ مِّن رَبِّهِمْ وَرَحْمَةٌ. These are the ones who God sends blessings to and greetings to, right? وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُهْتَدُونَ. And these are the ones who are guided. So that's one advice I give all of us, that we must take into account the enormous mercy and gift of Allah, and no destruction of the universe can take us away from the imminent return to Allah.
I think to practicalize that, what are we losing our patience in? If you're negative towards your wife, if you hurt your children, if you're in a relationship you're not supposed to be in, Allah says, show patience, give up. If you have a negative friend that you need to remove yourself in, if you're in a bad relationship, whatever it is, show patience, do it Allah way, be Allah li, as they say. And Allah says, watch. You know, there's a famous saying I always hear you say, he says, lower your gaze, the Prophet says, I mean, you'll see wonders, you'll see a paradise. But most of us can't think greater than the way we feel. And you ask them, why did you go after that relationship? Or why did you cut off that person? Or why did you do A, B? Oh, I felt like it. Well, that's the body controlling the mind because of bad habits. So how do you rewire that? Is first reflecting and saying, wait, let me try a different approach. You know, Imam Khomeini, Allah Rahmah, says in his 40 hadith, you replace that bad character. He says, wallahi, within a few days, God is going to replace it with something better if you show that patience to resist. Most of us can't, because we're just so impulsive. Everything is about gratification. Everything is about the social medias, that look of how everybody's perceiving me. And if we could just give that up just for a little bit, watch what Allah replaces with.
Sister Barak, what would you say, what in your practices, how do you work? I know you work with certain kinds of patients, right? But as a role model example on how we should be cognizant of Allah, as you mentioned, what sort of practices do you put into place to not only make that individual see light at the end of the tunnel, to see the glasses half full, but also for it to seep into their psyche, into their hearts, so that they sort of resonate on a continual basis, the positive character?
Well, it's exactly what you're saying. So I'm just going to add the psych perspective. And I know, Hajj, you've studied psychology, so you can back me up with this. So usually when we're trying to get rid of a bad habit and create a good habit, it's about routine again, right? And so we've seen in our studies, it takes about 2 to 3 weeks, around 21 days to develop a good or bad habit, right? So I work with my clients on that, developing good eating habits, sleeping habits, exercise, getting rid of toxic people, setting boundaries, being assertive, building up self-esteem. So we work on that model of doing 2 to 3 weeks. And I know from an Islamic perspective, we have the magic number of 40 days, right? So okay, 3 weeks, let's add 3 more weeks. We'll make it 6 weeks, 40 days. And we have a hadith that talk about that. And so that's how we can build the positive and negative habit, or get rid of negative habits through that, right? So it is implementing and hammering down those routines. When you have a counselor or a life coach or a therapist or somebody that you can work with to be accountable to yourself, you're not being accountable to the therapist, it's to yourself in that setting. It's almost like you have a cheerleader with you type of thing to back you up and support you and just empower you, right? And I find people who take that on, and I know the folks that come to me who are dealing with depression or anxiety, when we come down and we investigate it and just do the questioning and the interviewing, it comes down sometimes to a lack of self-esteem. Exactly. Or a lack of faith sometimes in some people, or a lack of meaning or satisfaction in life.
So underline these words you just used, right? Self-esteem, meaning, what was the other words you used? Values. If you look at these are all ethereal matters.
Yes.
Yeah, these are value-based issues, right? So people like Robert Sapolsky, who is a famous scientist at Stanford University, and he describes the biology of how depression works. You know, and he uses an interesting metaphor. He says, depression is aggression turned inwards.
SubhanAllah. Amazing.
Okay?
Yeah.
And he breaks it down. And what's interesting about typical empirical biology or empirical science is that you work with the tangibles, right? And then you wonder what caused what, right? How much dopamine was there? You know, what was the cause of, you know, X chemical and Y chemical, and the combination of the two led to this side effect. So it's all biology. But what's fascinating is, even from your clinical experience, you will notice that these are all ancillary reactions to the thoughts, to the vision, to the idea, to the values, to that inner spirit, the heart of the human being that's really existing in this universe, and using the brain, the mind, the hands, the eyes, the ears as extensions of that soul. You see, it's fascinating to me. And the biology is also an extension to all of that, right? So when you go to court and a person just murdered someone, he said, well, he had a surge of adrenaline and it led him to smack this person and kill this person. Of course, what will the court try to establish? You know, they're going to measure the level of adrenaline at that moment. And if it crosses that red line, then you're guilty, you know, or you're not guilty. It doesn't make sense, right? You cannot take tangibles and measure it as a guilt or lack thereof. But we do work to establish a willful intent to commit the act. SubhanAllah. Once again, it boils down to the intent. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُكُمْ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. You know, niyat, intentions. And I think if we train our generations to as you mentioned, take ownership of yourself, be in control of yourself. And the self is not just a combination of chemicals and triggers and physical entities, but the thought, the vision of the hereafter, the quwwat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, quwwat al-shahwiyya, ghadabiyya, aqaliyya, and that combination of training by which this person now, with that positive thought, as Brother Hussein is mentioning, that the minute you have positive thoughts, your body suddenly starts to produce positive results, not only chemically, but socially, spiritually, physically.
Synchronicities start happening.
Yeah, exactly.
And remember, your personality determines your personal reality. So instead of people complaining, saying that my reality is A, B, C, your reality is like that because of your personality. So if there's things that you don't like in your life and you want to change, instead of waiting for that environment to change, you become that change. So what is it about your personality that you need to change?
Yeah, but I think that's the conversation. Yes. That how can I change, right? If my vision is now, instead of saying, okay, I'm going to live on this earth for 50 years and I'm going to die, or maybe I'll live to 80 years and I'm going to die. And I know when I reach 60, 70, my hair is going to turn gray, my wrinkles are going to form, I'm going to start getting arthritis. All these problems are going to start falling into place. You know what? I don't even know if I want to achieve anything right now. And you start to kill it because that negative mental image, right? So you're right. It's completely essential that for me to change my character, requires
you said it. Take ownership. What do? We say, oh, it's my ex-husband the reason why I am this way. Oh, it was my teacher, that's the reason why I failed. Yeah. Or it was because of my boss. Until you take ownership that it's you, that you're the problem, like you always say, and you're the solution, then your reality changes. Otherwise, you being the same person expecting a different result, we call insanity. So what is it? This is a great time to reflect. Go to people that love you and say, what is it I should change about myself? You were going to say, sister.
I was just going to say, to add something practically, because it sounds great. Everything we're saying, we're feeling really good right now, aren't we? Got the positive hormones going. Well, everybody who's watching right now, we can't see you, but I'm going to get everybody to do this little thing right now, okay? To prove what we're saying so that you can see with your eyes and that you can actually do it for the next 2 to 3 weeks leading up to 40 days and however long this may take, because the reality is we don't know how long it's going to take. So right now with your family, because it's a great family activity to do as well, or even just with somebody next to you, lie down on the floor, okay? And the person who's laying down, I want you to think only temporarily some negative thoughts right now. Think of some negative thoughts. It could be related to the pandemic right now. It could be thoughts, anything negative, just temporarily. Okay, you are in a safe space. This is not going to trigger you, inshallah. Now the person next to you, okay, while you're laying down, the person next to you standing up, lift the leg while the person is thinking the negative thoughts and observe what's going to happen to the leg. So I'm just going to tell you what's supposed to happen because we can't see what's going on. Usually when we do this experiment, what happens is the leg is very heavy to lift. Resistance. This is exactly what we're saying. It's because of the negative thoughts. It's not magic. It's our bodies proving to us, tafa'alu bil khair tajidu, right? So negative thoughts, the body is reacting this way. Now, let's stop the negative thoughts. Let's think positive thoughts, such as going to our masjid, celebrating Eid, inshallah, together, or having your favorite food, or meeting your friends and family, going outside, traveling, whatever it is, something positive. Graduation, because I know a lot of students, especially at my university, they're not going to have their graduation right now. And those who work hard for it, that could be very disappointing. So think of something positive imagery in your head while you're laying down. Keep thinking that positive image. Now, the person who's standing next to the leg, lift up the leg. What's happened to the leg this time? It moved up very easily, or at least it should. What does this prove? What we've been telling you right now. Right? When you have a positive or negative thought, your body will respond to it. So practical habits for the next while, what we can do is practice these positive opportunities that you have. I bet right now 90% of us are living in houses that are very messy. I can attest to it. You're not seeing behind the camera, but I can see it. This is an opportunity now to declutter our house, work together as a family, to fix things up around the house, fix our relationships with each other, right? Exercise every single day. Create that as part of your routine. I can tell you personally, the last 2 weeks working from home, the days where I got up and I exercised, the rest of the day, alhamdulillah, I just got through the day. I was energetic, was very positive. And I noticed the days where I didn't exercise, it's not the same when you go to the gym, huh? Because when you go to the gym, you're mentally preparing yourself. You got your clothes, what you're going to do, how long you're going to be there, you know, after work or so on. When you're at home, it's so easy to let go. And I noticed the days that I didn't exercise, I felt it for the rest of the day. So force yourself positively. So empower yourself, even if you don't feel like it. Just go online for 20 minutes or just do something. Because what happens when you exercise, basic stress management, is you're getting rid of the stress hormones, the cortisol, right? You're releasing endorphins, happy hormones into your system, which is why you feel so great after a workout, after whatever kind of exercise, healthy exercise that you're doing, that gets the heart rate going and endorphins are released into your system. Can't tell you enough about healthy eating during this time, says the one who went and bought a whole bunch of chocolate bars the other day, right? But chocolate is also proven, dark chocolate, to release happy hormones in your system as well. So it's about moderation and balance. But healthy eating during this time is crucial as well, to help, again, with your immunity and decreasing your stress levels, right? And sleep. I know our sleep is completely off right now, whether it's we're not working or we're working from home, our kids are home, we're in each other's faces all the time, we're Netflixing all night, you know, that type of thing. Please, please, please make sure that you do have your sleep in balance. I don't know if some of you have noticed that even though you're sleeping late, you're still your body wakes you up for work or fajr. It's that biological rhythm, right? Like we're used to that, subhanAllah, again, because it's part of routine. So in this 2-week mark right now that we're at, we're actually realizing, hey, this is really happening. So we got to create new habits right now to continue doing that. Now, other activities you can do at home with the kids, there's so many resources out there on the internet that parents are sharing with each other. And I know a lot of classrooms have gone virtual. I can see that with my own daughter as well. So keeping up and working with your kids one-on-one to helping them with their homework, this is a great opportunity. My daughter didn't get to do her science fair project. She's saying, I want to do a project on coronavirus so I could present it next year. You know, that's subhanAllah. So this is a great opportunity.
She can even do it online and record it so the world can see her science project.
I'll tell her that.
You also talked about decluttering. This is an opportunity maybe to forgive somebody, an opportunity to let go, to get rid of that automatic negative thought within your mind.
Emotional decluttering, yeah.
And to really, really release that, and to forgive your ex-husband, forgive that person. You know, maybe it's a time right now, if you want to just change your state, just send a text to somebody right now. I challenge you and say, look, I'm thinking about you, somebody that you haven't reached out to a while. Just take your phone and say, I'm going to do this right now, and watch the response and watch what state that puts you in.
And people are waiting for somebody to suggest that. Remember, we're highly influenced by suggestions, right? Shaitan's strength, Iblis's strength lies in the power of suggestion. That's all. That's the real power Allah has given him. And we, as a creation of Allah that's also blessed, we can be highly influenced, and we can influence each other through subtle suggestions, if not direct suggestions, right? So let's take advantage of that, and let's create those very positive suggestions, so that people feel motivated and they feel empowered, and tell them, hey, how about you do this right now? Have you thought of picking up the phone and doing that? Huh? What? Oh, you want me to do that now? Yeah, just do it now. Really? You want me to do that now? That power of suggestion and sort of putting that push a little bit on top of that changes people's lives forever.
Plus reading. Readers are leaders. Look at somebody something they want to do. Somebody's already done it, and they've spent 30 years of doing it. Instead of doing the same mistakes, read their book and do the same and implement the same things. I know Al-Islam also came out with a new site. It's called al-islam.org/Kids Corner. It's a great resource now as well for kids as well in terms of faith-based.
I'm going to add to what the brothers were saying about communication. Have you noticed the last 10 years progressively, it's been texting, and especially this younger generation, they don't call, they don't video call. It's all about just that constant communication through words and emoticons and BRB and all this lingo and Snapchatting, and even families at home Snapchat, like parents are Snapchatting to their kids come down to dinner. There's face-to-face communication.
No,
So
even during dinner, they're talking. Even during dinner, they're talking Snapchat.
well, see, that's the thing. I'm guilty of taking pictures of food all the time too, but I do it from a mental health perspective in terms of really enjoying it and being mindful, right? So I find, and I've been saying this to a lot of my clients who are lonely as well. How about you video call? This is something we've forgotten to do now. We've just been texting, and then especially with different time zones, we don't even say good night or good morning anymore. It's just, hey, how's it going, right? This is an opportunity to reconnect with people. Yes, keeping physical distances, but not social distancing.
Exactly.
Reconnect yourself socially with people using social media in a positive way.
Exactly.
FaceTiming or video WhatsApping, this is a wonderful opportunity. I myself last week, alhamdulillah, I spent 3 hours on video calling a cousin of mine, which we haven't done in such a long time because she's so busy with school, and there's no way I could sit for 3 hours talking to somebody because I'm always so busy myself. But this is the time we want to connect everybody because we're not going to see each other this Ramadan at the masjid,
Exactly.
right?
And
So we can do online connection.
Isn't it wonderful that the technology exists and we have these kinds of, apps by which, we can connect the world and do these kinds of meetings, right? With relative ease. I know that the bandwidth is going to increase over time, but it's amazing in the last 20 years, the level of growth that we've had in this cyber world, right? And let's take advantage of it. Let's reinvent ourselves. I know me as a public speaker, one of the most difficult things is getting on a plane and traveling the world. It's very taxing. It's arduous. Sometimes it's very difficult, and especially now with border control and border, issues with countries. Where did you go? Who did you meet? And so on and so forth. I mean, who has the time for that kind of stuff? So sometimes it's better just to take advantage of this, where you're just, click of a button and, turn it on.
And like you were saying, Hajj, to actually go out of your way to talk to people who are the elderly or the vulnerable in the community, or that are suffering at home with an abusive partner, or parents and children, whatever the case may be. These folks need you right now. So please connect. And, we always do this to people who are struggling with mental health issues, right? And especially in our community, because it's such a taboo and there's so many misconceptions around it. And I've always encouraged people in the lectures and the workshops that we've done in different communities, say, hey, how are you? Not, as Arabis, shankum, shakhbarkum, shakumako, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff, the hellos, right? But we don't go deeper. It's just surface level. So we always encourage people, especially if there's something going on, or even if you don't know, hey, how about we go out for a coffee or lunch and, let's just catch up and chat. And then, that's when you're encouraging people to talk. And I know this was a method that was also encouraged and shown by the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, where they talk to people, to talk to them about what's going on with their problems, because sometimes there's a lot of shame around what's going on, right? So here we are learning how to do this virtually now. This is an opportunity to reach out to the vulnerable in our community, especially those that we know are struggling with mental health issues, abusive households, whatever the case, physically ill. It's so important. We are social creatures. We crave for that. Why does the Quran say we created for you another soul to be with, right? It just proves to you right there, we need that social interaction with each other. This is an opportunity yet again for us to reconnect, forgive, like the brother was saying, make amends with family, sulat al-raham, if you can, because sometimes when there's abuse involved, sexual, physical, mental, it's so hard. You need to process that with a therapist. I kind of tell people, you don't necessarily need to forgive, but perhaps you can let it go and forget about it, but let God help you with that. That's a whole therapeutic process, right? So we can't easily just say,
or let it not affect you, or let it not affect you negatively.
Exactly.
Not tying an emotion to something that's happened in the past. That's true forgiveness. Like a person says, I forgave my ex-husband. The ex-husband comes in the room and you see all this emotion. Well, you haven't forgiven him.
Right.
You're still feeling so.
But it's not that easy, though. It's not easy to do that when somebody's physically hurt you and taken advantage of you. You need to go through that process. We also cannot invalidate what the survivor has gone through, whether it's a male or a female, by the way, because we know it happens to both genders in our community, right? But there's a lot, like you're saying, there's a lot of weight to that negativity when you're holding that anger and grudge towards somebody. Letting it go can be part of reframing that forgiveness, right?
But I think also we're so resentful now as a community because of the cyber world, where we're these keyboard warriors just say anything. And one of the things about resentment that we hold on to, Nelson Mandela said it's like drinking poison, expecting the other person to die. It's like me holding this phone. After a minute, nothing will happen. But if I hold this phone for 10 hours, my hand will become very heavy. That's what resentment is. And we hold on to so much of it. And we have to teach people, it's not the snake bite that hurts us. It's the venom that it leaves behind. And people like yourselves and other experts really teach people how to let go of that emotion. This is a great opportunity right now through this to really reflect on what resentment are you holding on to? What poison do I have to let go? For me, this is a great opportunity to take advantage of that.
So
you had another question?
Yeah, there's another great question as you guys were talking about some of the things that we should be doing in this time. Great question here is, do you have any tips for removing the cloudiness of the mind that doesn't allow us to focus and contemplate on what's in front of us or even what we're thinking about?
Well, the mind becomes cloudy. No, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
No, I was just clarifying, lifting the fogging of the mind. So you mean like anxiety and fear and being unclear about what's going on? Is that what they mean?
Fear of the past, worry about the future. That's usually what clogs them.
I mean, what I read in the question was, how do I get away from the distractions that prevent me from being more focused?
So any tips for removing that cloudiness of the mind, right? Or
but what you mean cloudiness of the mind, to use that term, is that you're implying, how do I remove the cloudiness of the mind, as Sister Berak is asking, can have a biological issue, is what you're asking, or is it more to do on a thought, value, spiritual, ethical level?
I think more what you just said, Hajj Hassanain. Again, it's how to focus on what's in front of us and what we're thinking about. A lot of times, even in our prayer, we kind of lose our thought, right? So I think this is more as we're reflecting, as we're looking at this time in terms of how, maybe we improve ourselves, or even with our families. How do we keep that focus, or what tips are available to us to keep that focus?
I think if you keep, as we say, there are two kinds of visions that we must get used to and strengthen one, and then piggyback with the other. And that is the one that should be the mother of all thoughts is the long-term thought. The essential return to Allah, I think, is the ultimate thought that should be so pervasive within us that every conversation is predicated on that thought. And it's not easy to get there, but if you want to conquer life, you have to conquer that death and the eternal journey. That's, I think, it's the only way to really have a clear vision on this earth. That's my opinion. And I see this from the perspective of the Quran. Because whenever you look at, when Allah extols, the personalities that He has chosen, like Ahlul Bayt, the prophets, you will find that they always expressed this long-term vision of the Day of Judgment, meeting God, having to answer for the grace of God. So that's the long term. And then piggybacking on top of that is the short-term vision. So all the day-to-day transactions are predicated on the long-term vision. And I think if we can maintain those two visions simultaneously in parallel, a lot of our lives will become more focused. So let's say, for example, you already have that level of certainty that you will meet your Lord. You do want to meet Him on good terms. You have come to the conclusion that God is merciful. You have concluded that God has blessed us with guidance through scriptures as well as agents, 124,000 agents, plus Ahlul Bayt as the guiding light, plus those agents who resonate that same message among our own people, family, friends, within the community, right? Now what you want to do is that this becomes your ethos. This is who you are. Now you're going to go out and let's say there's a piece of property that you really want to invest in because you feel that investment can bring you a great return and that you can be very successful and maybe eradicate potential poverty, right? Now you're struggling through that. So you're making deals, the buyer, you're the buyer, the seller is sort of giving you a hard time. You know that your numbers have to be here for you to be able to, these are the details, day-to-day details, right? You have a broker who may be playing on two sides. You find out that this broker is not necessarily very honest with you, and now you're a bit disappointed, right? And then suddenly the money that you were supposed to have, suddenly there's an iffy question that maybe 10% or 50% of it won't be available. So you've got all these potential issues that you're very distracted with. And the collection of those, if we zone into it too much, can make us very agitated. It can lead to a level of this, obsessive compulsive behavior, where you're just so zoned into this thing that you just don't see anything else, right? It becomes very myopic in vision. And so how do I remove this cloudiness? I mean, to use these extreme examples, is that you delve into all these pursuits, which Allah has made it obligatory upon us, right? We need to pursue success in life. We need to pursue material things. We need to pursue our passions. We need to pursue our relationships. We need to pursue, producing children on earth. We need to pursue all these material things that God has blessed us with. But in every step of that pursuit are hurdles and problems and promises that get violated, or expectations or misunderstandings. And these day-to-day problems, if they're not juxtaposition with a bigger vision, it leads to this, what we call aggression turned inwards. Because what ends up happening is you find the precarious nature of life is so constant and so predictable that you lose hope in trying to solve everything, or anything for that matter, because you feel it's beyond your control. And as a result, the only way now to control it is to punish yourself, you see, or to lose hope in God, or to stop praying and say, you know what, prayer doesn't work. I've prayed and I've tried this and the problems keep coming at me. It's not getting solved. And in fact, the more I solve, the bigger the problem. Yeah, but that same person is a gamer, and every time they go from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3, and if they go to stage 50 and it gets harder and harder, they're excited. And it's not as easy as stage 1. But in life, they're expecting everything to be constantly stage 1, of which would never be there, right? So I think if you have that long-term vision, now you're going into a meeting, you're going to negotiate. And this is a make or break situation, right? And you know that Allah is the owner of everything. You know Allah owns the person across that table. You know that that person who you're negotiating with is returning to Allah the same way as you are. You know that all these material things and transactions and the checks and the bank drafts and the balances and the documents and the legal documents, these are all going to be destroyed, right? كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال. You know that and you're firm with it. But you cannot destroy what's on the table. You have to carefully walk on these eggshells to make sure that you bring success, because Allah wants me to do that. Allah wants me to struggle. إِنَّكَ كَادِحٌ إِلَى رَبِّكَ كَدْحًا فَمُلَاقِيهِ. What happens then is that your mind becomes very clear, because you're negotiating, you're getting into details, but you've got plan B. And plan B says, worst case scenario, I walk out of here. You know what's fascinating about that attitude? Is that the negotiator on the opposite side is actually reading that energy. Mm-hmm. But they have no idea what they're reading. They just are reading confidence in you. And because of that, they were going to put more hurdles in your way. But because they saw so much confidence in you, they threw the towel in and they accepted what you asked them. It's because that clarity of thought in the hereafter was so clear that this individual looking at you pierces right through your heart and he's telling you something and there's nothing you can do about it. I think this is how our prophets and imams were. I truly believe that inshallah, when we meet Imam Mahdi Ajallahu Ta'ala Faraja, and I hope it's soon, I believe I will see an abundance of that. And in fact, I will be overwhelmed with that incredible presence of certainty, yaqeen. I think this is just a very idealistic way of looking at things, but I think every single day we should talk about it, we should reaffirm it, we should tell our children about it, we should talk about the hereafter like it's now. You know, many a times, like I was reading an article, they say, yeah, we should write a will. And I chuckled, I said, subhanallah, you know, this is coming in the news now. there's a recommendation that people should write wills. I mean, the sunnah of the Prophet was to write wills. The Prophet said, write your will. And if you die without a will, you die like a death of a disbeliever, right? So why is writing a will so important? Well, in the material world, you may jinx yourself by writing a will because then you may die. Oh, please don't say you're going to die because you may jinx yourself, you may die. So we have all these countermeasures by which to say, let's not talk about death, let's not talk about our departures. And there's reason for that. It's not bad, it's not wrong, but we've overdone it, where we have created a facade where only, even when people die, the undertaker puts makeup on them to make them look like they didn't die. So that I have no concept of a dead person looking pale, right? Because I don't want it in my vision, because it's going to slow me down. Slow you down towards what? I think you have to embrace that death. Imam Ali alayhi salam says that my lifeless body will be a greater lesson to you than my sermons. So why is that important? Well, if you don't embrace that, you're not going to remove this cloudy mind. And there's more to speak about that, but you get the point.
I think when you live, in a way that you've gone through so many rock bottoms, or you have these cloudy thoughts that you can't do it, realize that somebody in the past has gone through it, and we're in a much worse situation than you ever were. They were able to get through it. So can you. I remember. So for me, foggy thoughts is through dhikr, meditation, mental rehearsal. Where I was reading about inner city kids in Detroit, how they don't know their fathers, they wake up hungry, they don't have breakfast. And I said, Allah, I'm going to envision myself speaking to these people. I haven't spoken to inner city kids. A week goes by, I did the dhikr, I did the meditation, and somebody calls and says, this person, the NFL player, is supposed to go speak, he canceled. You want to go? I go there, it's all inner city kids. And I said, I get it. You don't know who your father is. But nobody's going to care. In terms of you don't become successful, you have to overcome that. And the most successful people are the ones that overcome that. In regards to fear, to not live in fear, you can actually smell it. They've taken two groups of people. One group were running on a treadmill. The other group jumped from a plane and they captured their sweat. Then they had a third group in a machine where they would smell. The third group didn't know what they were smelling. And then the brain the first group that smelled the people running on the treadmill, nothing happened. The second group, they came out and said, what did you feel? Because your brain, the neuron shot up. Said, we felt fear. We don't know why. So they've proven you could actually feel fear. So you spend out that energy. If you're scared, especially of the day of judgment, in the sense that you don't feel that you're worthy enough, or you're not considerate of enough, or whatever it is, you could sense that and smell that.
I just went to Walgreens, right? And I was coming towards the register, and the lady said, sir, can you please wait behind the blue line? And this was like 20 feet away from the person at the cashier. And I said, oh, okay, sure. So I went back. I said, subhanAllah, nobody wants to come near somebody. And I was smiling not because of the fact that we have this distancing, but the fact that we value life so much. I said, if only the world could live like this, so that we don't drop bombs on people indiscriminately. Yes. We don't send drones destroying families, indiscriminately. And that when we do go home, just like as I was mentioning, instead of us hiding in this facade that, let's not talk about death, how about we embrace it by valuing life? So that when you go home, you hug your mother, you hug your father, you hug your children, right? Because you hug your spouse, because all of these factors implies that in the next second, this person that you just hugged may not be alive. So how about you value them now? But the value of life, one has to always understand that the imminent death is there. And it's not a negative, it's a very positive thing. You've seen football players when they hold their little babies, they can crush it with one hand, but they're so gentle and they're so cuddly, and right? And you're saying this person can crush this baby. But the fact that the baby is so fragile, that huge individual understands its value so much that they cuddle it in such gentleness with tender, loving care. I think that's so beautiful, right? So in this problem that we have today, when we look at numbers, statistics, when Iraq war was taking place, 100 people got bombed today, 500 people just got blown up. And it became such a statistic, we became completely desensitized in the Western world. Oh, really? Only 500 died today? Wow, it's better than yesterday. It was 800 yesterday. Like our regard for life had reached such a ridiculous level, and we validated on the grounds of, well, it's terror country, it's a religion of other people, it's a region of other people, this is where terrorism, it's okay if we bomb them. Well, I don't care whether it's the Middle East or United States or Africa or any of the 7 continents on Earth. A life is a life, not only of a biped, but even of a quadruped. Indiscriminate killing of animals, animal abuse, all of these should be heightened alert within our souls for us to appreciate life. And I think it takes these issues that we have in the world today for us to come to terms with it. And inshallah, let's take this once again as an opportunity to make our awareness of life as part of our life.
So many interesting things here that were said. I don't know where to start from, but just interesting the last point you made, Hajj, about what has happened in Iraq. And since I have family that live there, we're always been in contact in terms of what's going on. And they do have that attitude. They have the attitude themselves there as well, in terms of دم العراق رخيص الأرواح رخيصة, that their lives are worthless, that their blood is cheap, right? And this is how people feel about us. It is sad because they've gotten again to that desensitization that we have in the West, but they themselves leave the house not knowing. They come back. This is during the time from 2006 till recently when the attacks have stopped internally. Alhamdulillah, it's now there's a different enemy on the front lines. And what's interesting, what's coming out from there is there's a different fear. It's that they became so I can never say that word right, desensitized during that time of the bombings and the terror attacks in Iraq, that the hospitals or people losing somebody, there's a Fatha Narba'in here, it just became part of their norm there, right?
Right.
But doctors now are terrified with this new threat that they've had, more than the mutilated bodies that were coming into their hospitals.
Right.
SubhanAllah, they became desensitized to bombings and bodies exploding.
Yeah.
But this now is terrifying them. Again, perspective, right? So let's take that back to how do we decloud or declutter ourselves? I mean, you said it beautifully, Hajj. As Muslims, we direct ourselves to the submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in therapy, again, depends who I have in front of me. If it's a Muslim client, we always come back to that depending on their level of religiosity or spirituality, of course. If we're working with faith-based as well, it's again, your ultimate goal is towards God. Everything you do, whether it's your career, your family life, your volunteer work, your physical health, everything is directed towards that. So when we talk about goals, it truly depends on your background and whatnot, but from an Islamic perspective, of course, it is about that. Reorienting yourself back to God.
And get into the habit of dua. Dua, constant prayer.
Meditation.
بالعباد فوقاه الله سيئات ما مكروا لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. Yunus, when he entered the belly of the whale and he recited this, إني كنت من الظالمين, then Allah replies فاستجبنا له. The fa implies then, but it's also instantaneous. فاستجبنا له ونجيناه من الغم. He replied and removed his distress. So we, in this period of time, especially daily, recite, وَوَفَوِّضُ أَمْرِي إِلَى اللَّهِ, constant Ayat al-Kursi, read Joshan Kabir, mention the names of Allah, the names of Allah, يَا مَنِ اسْمُهُ دَوَاء وَذِكْرُهُ شِفَاء. It's so beautiful because when Allah says, أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبُ, the dhikr of Allah calms you down. In these difficult times when we're at home, my mother constantly, she's basically memorized Joshan Kabir. And in the house, Joshan Kabir is constantly playing. And you see her as she's working, she's reciting it. My father, the same thing. It's so beautiful because you have, when you indulge the family in the dhikr, even from a peripheral point of view, as a parent or as a child, and you're hearing somebody in your house reciting that all the time, even if you don't pay attention, it's seeping into our psyche. Absolutely. It's seeping into us. you know.
I just want to add to that from a clinical perspective, having Muslim clients come in. First of all, when they see me coming out to the waiting room, there's a look of fear and terror on their face in terms of, oh God, I'm going to have to tell them the haram things I've done, right? And so when we get into the session, I don't even talk about that, acknowledge that. They see the hijab, they know I'm Muslim. So we get into the practical issues. What brought them in? Okay, they're failing their classes, they're drinking, they're clubbing, they're into drugs, they're, using their parents' money. Some of them are international students. That's a lot of money, right? And they're failing their classes and they're terrified of telling their families what's going on with them back here, right? So these are some of the common stories we hear. And so some of them start getting into the spiritual aspect and start saying things like, because I haven't mentioned it, there's no judgment or anything like that. We're talking about fixing the issue and the problem, right? The mental health issues, the substances, the academics, whatever issues here. And then slowly they start saying things like, I've stopped praying, or I used to wear the hijab, or, I used to do this and I stopped. And so I'll come back and say something like, okay, so what would you like to do about it? Things like that. Right. Or I remember this story vividly, and this young man told me once, I don't pray. I don't want to pray. I can't pray. So I played devil's advocate and I said, okay, don't pray. Okay, so I said it like that at first. And we got, I know, don't worry, don't say that Berak said don't pray, no, but I'm going to get to it. It was the strategy at the time. I said, okay, that's fine. Yeah, I said, don't pray. Okay, that's fine. If that's what you feel right now, don't pray. We went and worked on the issues at hand, and then he came back at the end, and he said, I want to get into prayer again. And so what happened there, subhanAllah, first of all, there was no judgment. And this is something that's really important that we got to do when we're dealing with people who are struggling, right? No judgment. And this is something I always talk about when we go into the communities. Please don't play the haram police. You're going to push your daughter, your son, or anybody who's come to you with an issue further away. Listen. First of all, accept and listen. Acceptance doesn't mean you have to like it, but just listen to what they have to say, right? So you say that to them. You say, all right, so what does that mean to you? How can you do it? Because somebody who comes with a mental health issue, and you brothers know this, we can't tell them right away, go read the Quran, your faith is low, go read the dua. We can't start with that prescription right away. We have to deal with the mental health issue that's stopping them from reaching to that spirituality. That comes, subhanAllah, I've seen that time and time again, except for those people who are far gone from the religion. They have a lot more work to do before they get to that point. But those folks who come in and they're struggling, that jihad in nafs is just going right there. They come in with the problem, they find a face that's similar and that's not judging them, right? They slowly get to the point where they say, you know what, I'm gonna do this. And so we make a plan. So we talked about action and direction towards clearing and declogging everything, decluttering. It is part of the action plan. So in addition to taking care of your eating, sleeping, exercise, your mental health issues, your academic issues, okay, you're gonna talk to your parents about the term of the money that was lost. All right, we'll talk about that. Okay, let's include spirituality. How do you feel about that? Let's include that as part of your therapy and your action plan. And people, subhanAllah, they do that. Next time I see them, they say, all right, so I haven't really hit up my 5 prayers, but I've made up for them. Or I've started to read the Quran again. And that 10 minutes of reading made me feel so good. Yeah. And that in itself just empowers people bit by bit. SubhanAllah, it's so beautiful to see what we know. It's so beautiful to see it, and especially as a therapist, just to see people move along and use that as part of their therapy and redirecting themselves. It's so powerful and beautiful, but it really does come within our communities. When people first come to you with an issue, we can't judge them. We have to listen to them with an open heart. Show support and care and love. Even if people come to us with some really difficult issues, such as, hey, I don't think I have an attraction towards the opposite gender, or, things like that. Or, hey, I feel that I want to hurt myself or hurt others. These are really difficult things to deal with. Also, with what's happening right now, I think a lot of us have redirected ourselves from a lot of first world problems to bigger, large, macro kind of problems in terms of what's going on. And this is the opportunity again right now that we have to rethink what are our goals, what's our mission, what's our direction, what is truly important to us, large scale. And as Muslims, for us, death is haqq, it's truth, it's always in front of us. And unfortunately, a lot of us within our communities have had to face death even more now with this virus. There are people within our own communities struggling, fighting for their lives in the hospitals. People have already lost their lives. So we have to shift our mindset now to how are we going to deal with this? Because we have beautiful majalis that offer that grieving for our communities. We can't even grieve like that anymore right now. So yeah,
you know, like you said, what we do is when we do counseling from marriage to this abuse to even these gender, you know, issues in terms of bisexualities and so on, we always tell people they say, well, it's unknown, the future. I said, okay, you're going to make it known. You got to do a little bit of the work. I said, just take a walk with me, 3 days, 4 days, cross that river of change and just watch what happens. And that's where that trust, you know, comes in, and they have to really do the work. There's no substitute. At the end of the day, you cannot change anybody who doesn't want to change themselves. But if they have a vision that's so clear to them, that's greater than themselves, I've seen miracles over and over, and I'm sure you've seen it, Hajj has seen it. And that's the whole onus, is allow people to take their free will back, be able to think greater than the way they feel and say, you know what, my destiny is truly in my hands. I'm going to make the unknown known. I'm going to create it in here first. I'm going to tie an intention to it, an emotion to it, and then the trust in Allah comes. Because, you know, synchronicities, weird things that happen, these are God's breadcrumbs, at least for us.
See, what happens though in our judgment systems, in our belief systems, is that if I was to play the devil's advocate, and this is where most of us are victims, and the reason why we are so apathetic sometimes towards religion and God, is that from childhood we've been told that if you do not approach God in a state of perfection, you're doomed to hell.
You're going to hell.
So you know within yourself that there is no way I'll ever achieve perfection. So I'm already doomed anyway, right? So I have two options now. Do I keep struggling to apply, to try to get to this fictitious perfection, so that at least I have an argument towards God? Or I just sort of go back and forth to validate something on the Day of Judgment, you know, a little case on Judgment Day to convince God that, hey, I tried a little bit. Or to say, you know what, I'm so convinced that I'm such a loser, just like Stalin said, you know, when you kill the first person, it's murder. Right. And then after that, it's a statistic, right? So Shaitan now validates your evils and says, it's okay, there's nothing wrong with it, because there's no way for you to get out of this. So what we need to do, just like what Sister Berak did beautifully, is to say, hey, this is a judgment-free zone. This is one of the things, by the way, which is problematic in the world of psychology and psychiatry, the DSM. You know, in the professional world, you're not allowed to pass any sort of religious injunctions or angles towards your patients, right? I know some psychiatrists who, when they go through these kinds of issues, in subtle ways, they tell the patients to go and consult, a religious scholar, for example, for further help. So there's something positive there, because if a person is very, very judgmental, almost like in the old feudal age, you know, where you're going to hell and God is going to burn you on the stake, and you're an evil person and you're a witch, and, you know, we're going to have to dunk you on the water, and if you survive, you're a witch, and if you die, you're not a witch, kind of reality. And unfortunately, in the world that we live in today, especially under certain circumstances and environments, that's the overriding force that's out there. We're highly judgmental. You know, within split seconds, haram, you know, najis, kafir, you're kafir, this person's kafir.
You're pushing people away from the faith that way. Can I just throw in a joke very quickly?
Yes.
Have you heard of the joke? The mom runs into the room, wake up, there's a fire. And the kids go, where? In Jahannam if you don't get up and pray.
Yes, exactly.
That's a good one.
So I think this just epitomizes it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I ask children, you know, why do you pray? Oh, I have to pray. Why do you pray? Oh, because I'll go to hell otherwise. I said, you know, what kind of a loving God is ever so willing, you know, to just throw you in hell and roast you?
We forget about the mercy of Allah. You know, we even deal with
love, of course,
prostitutes within this Dearborn community. They come in so broken. And you show them an ayah of Quran where you do tawbah, Allah forgives you not only for that sin, but all your sins. That's an issue. Also have very bad parenting going on. You said, tell the parents not to be so judgmental. recent case, a daughter ran away from home. She was a 4.0 student. I look at the sister, I said, there's nothing wrong with this girl. And the father comes in. We're trying to reunite the family. He says, my daughter is shaped on. I said, no, she's not. She's a human being. She's not she's not a jinn. She's not made out of smokeless fire. And the father and 20 minutes go by, the father's ranting, and I look at the father, I say, you know what? I'd run away from you too. You're a disaster.
We wonder what the real
shaitan. In all my years of 12 years of doing this, every time I see a problem child, most of the time I see a problem parent. And usually, unless we change our personality, parents say, what do I do? My kid's always on the iPad, my kids are always this, or running away. So you have to change your personality to have a different reality. And this is a great time in life, because it's not enough to know, you have to know how. And we have everything at our fingertips.
And give them hope. I remember I came to Ottawa, for example, many years ago. And
we got to get you back here again after Hajj, after the pandemic, please.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
When I was there many years ago, we had a youth camp there, and one of the camps was to spend time at the school. As you know, Ottawa had that school. I don't know if the school is still there. Maybe it's still there.
We still have it. We still have it. We have a new building, inshallah. Yeah, inshallah. My daughter goes there.
Very nice, very nice. So when I was there, it was a late night, so the youth were, basically sleeping there for the night till Fajr prayers, and then they were going to sleep there. And they became very close to me. So we were all sitting in a circle, and they started asking me very sensitive questions about self-pleasure, about all these things that typically you cannot ask in public, right? Very sensitive questions. And the questions were always loaded with the judgment in it. So Hajj, I do this. Now I know I'm going to burn in hell. But what can you do to reduce the amount of time in hell? So the question is already loaded that I'm already condemned. I'm damaged goods. I'm going to hell. Now, brother, what can you do to help me? So I looked at the youth and I said, no, who told you you're going to hell with that? He said, yeah, the chef this and the scholar, this one told me I'm going to hell. I said, no, you're not. First of all, no one is the master of the day of judgment except Allah. Okay, you recite this 10 times a day. Maliki yawmiddin. God is the master of the day of judgment. Nobody knows who's going to hell and who's going to paradise. Unless Allah tells you, there is no way you can send anybody to hell, not even yourself. So these kids looked at me and said, okay, so what's going to happen? I said, these are small sins, and you should try to avoid them under conditions. And it varies depending on the approach and how the Maraji look at things. But even under that condition, you need to look at the solution to these issues as to why Islam looks down on it. Why is it makruh? Why is it haram? Why is it forbidden? Let's look at the reason. When you look at the scientific reason, the social reason, the psychological reason, maybe then you'll be inclined to move away from it. Right. So these kids got very excited and they said, oh, so you mean to tell me that I'm not going to hell because I've been doing this? I said, no, of course not. Furthest from it. So anyway, we continued. So lots of questions came, and the most profound event took place that it was literally about 2 minutes before Salah time, Fajr time. And most of them said, Hajj, we need to go do our wudu. We got to get ready for Salah. So I said, oh, what time is it? They said, it's in a few minutes. So the adhan wasn't even recited. None of the scout leaders came to them and said, hey, it's prayer time. Come on, guys, you need to go pray. None of that. They all unanimously almost reminded me of prayer. So they got up and they said, we got to go do our wudu. So I asked the brother who's in charge, I said, these kids, are they so on time with prayer? He said, no. I said, then why were they so excited to go and do their salah? And something sort of talked to me, within that sentence, within that moment, where I felt like, wow, that individual realized they're not damaged goods. There's hope. And suddenly love started to flow out of this child, and love of God, that you want to go and pray. Many times I see when people have an aversion to prayer or quitting prayer, it's because they've done it transactionally, they've misplaced it, or they're condemned or self-condemned. And if we can simply remove those judgments and make that individual say that prayer is like food for you, it's an appreciation. And the sooner you can pray, the more you can show your appreciation to God. Just like when somebody brings you a gift, don't wait too long to say thank you for the gift, because you're belittling the value of the gift, right? And once that child sees that prayer is actually an appreciation, it's a thank you towards the gifts of God, more than avoiding hell. You see, of course, when you do salah and when you appreciate, you will avoid hell. Of course, we need to avoid hell. But that's not the driving force of ibadah and conversation.
And I think the opposite of addiction is connection. And all you did is give them a connection. There's no greater connection than that to Allah.
Yeah.
And that's the
In a
key.
positive way.
Brother Amin, what do you have for us?
Just
So-
quickly,
Oh,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
So just quickly to that, again, from a psychotherapeutic point of view, it's that positive reinforcement. When you're saying, get up, there's fire, you're going to hell, that negative reinforcement does nothing. It doesn't do anything. But when you do it, and I remember hearing a lecture one time, Hajj, where you spoke about instilling love in our children for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was so beautifully inspiring. And for me, I remembered right now, it's exactly that. It's that positive reinforcement. My daughter just became mukallafa this year. And so we've been training for the last few months, mashallah. And so when she knew it was time for her, that her salah has to be counted, she gets up at Fajr. She no complaints, subhanAllah. I'm like, I really hope you're like that still by the time that you're 16. But it was so beautiful to see that in a child who has created or has become aware of that love in her heart. And she gets up at Fajr, no complaints, prays, and goes back to sleep, and then wakes up later for school and insists on wearing the hijab. And again, I guess it has to do with role modeling, seeing what's happening in the community, but it's the way that we teach our children, right? Instilling that love, not forcing it.
Nothing is more beautiful than when a child on their own wakes up to do a good deed. That's priceless.
It is.
When an old person wakes up to pray, that's also fantastic. That's amazing. But if you put the two on the scale, one has, of course, a lot of experience and wisdom and vision, and hence they wake up for salah, knowing that they're going to leave the world soon. But on this one, if this child can understand the gravity of the gifts of God, and while they are so distracted, easily distracted on this earth, and yet they remove that and focus towards Allah, this is priceless.
And they wake up excited. Older people don't look forward to prayer because there's nothing exciting, because they don't create. They really feel that their dreams and goals and aspirations are limited. Where those kids wake up excited because maybe there's something new coming.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way we need to live. And most people, we become slaves to this world. That's why Imam Ali said, die before you die.
So what you're saying reminds me of living mindfully, eating mindfully, praying mindfully. And if we use, especially during this time right now, well, there's a lot of panic and hysteria, it gives you the opportunity to slow down and be mindful, whether it's through salah, whether it's through eating, whether it's our connectiveness with people, or just through our own spirituality and reflection right now, just truly living in the moment. And one strategy for those who are dealing with tension and anxiety and panic right now is to accept, first of all, this panic and anxiety that is occurring. Don't fight it. The more you fight and push and deny, it will come back in the form of perhaps a panic attack. So acknowledge it. Yeah, this is happening. What we're dealing with it. That's happening. All right. How do I deal with it? Well, I can't really change anything. Let's look at, again, the focus of control and in the moment. Okay, so going through your fears, the what if, and this is a strategy by Dr. David Burns, who's the guru for anxiety. And I did a training with him years ago, and he taught us how to do this with our clients. But this is something we can all do, is truly face our ultimate fears right now. What if? Okay, so is this so bad? Let's go down further. Then this happens, and then this happens, and this happens. And you get down to the root, the base. When you face that, usually when we get down to it, and we saw videos of him doing this like in session with clients who are doing this for real, at the end, folks, and I've seen this with my own clients as well, and I've tested this on myself, well, that's not so bad. I can handle that, whatever it is. Ultimately, and sorry, morbid humor here, ultimately we're gonna die, right? We're gonna die ultimately. But before we get to that point, what are we going to do about living in the moment mindfully to push away these fears? Is facing them and really being grateful for what we do have around us day to day to day. This truly lifts the clarity. Sorry, brother, what was your question, brother Amin?
No, so there's one person who had asked a question at the very get-go, and I was looking for the right time to ask you guys. And
I think let's make this the last
time-
one because of
time
time.
is flying. Actually, there's 2 questions left. I think the second one might be the good wrap-up question, but I think this one can be answered very quickly. I know Hajj Hussain, Berak, this is really up your alley here, all 3 of you. So there's a viewer that's asking about advice for those who are caregivers for mentally ill people, bipolar. Obviously right now with everybody confined to the houses, any advice for them with the current situation?
Remember, there's a
Sister Rock, you wanna
chemical
take that
imbalance when dealing with bipolar or any of these issues. You gotta get them the professional help. It's so important. Research. There's so much information in terms of how to cope and what are the best things out there right now. I know Dr. Daniel Amen, he's one of the leaders in this. He does brain scans. So getting people to actually do a brain scan, that when you are dealing with bipolar or dealing with these issues, look, when you have a broken arm, you go to the doctor, he gives you an x-ray, he says, okay, put a cast. But when you have a broken brain, we don't look. We just prescribe medications and we guess, and these poor people are here now trying to take care of them. But now there's the new age, where there's evidence is the strongest language out there now. And a person like Dr. Daniel Amen and other people, there are really, really good resources out there. Because remember, it's no longer enough to know, you have to know how. Yes, go ahead, sister.
Absolutely what you said, brother, is to get the appropriate professional help. And just because we're psychologists or psychotherapists or psychiatrists, we all have our specialties, just like cardiologists, blood specialists, neurologists, and whatnot. So some of us do therapy in certain areas than others. This specifically is not my area because it tends to be more of a psychiatric issue, or doctors who do therapy because there's medication involved, and psychotherapists don't have the ability to diagnose or treat with medication, but we certainly work with clients who have bipolar. And the idea here is with bipolar, you've got the high, hyper happy, take on the world type of energy, can do anything, and then you have these low lows, and it becomes really hard for people around the folks who do have bipolar to manage or deal or handle it. Absolutely. So while you're caring for them, whether it's through medication or being patient or dealing with the ups and downs and the highs and lows of the moods, it's so important to take care of yourself as well. So that also includes setting boundaries, not getting emotionally engaged with people that can trigger you as well, or sap your energy, right? And this is a tactic and a strategy we use in therapy all the time, not just with folks who are caretakers or family and friends who are dealing with people who have mental disorders such as bipolar and other personality disorders, but for you in general with toxic people, or if you're living with abusive people, setting a different, or rather a boundary, right? Setting your boundaries around them, not getting yourself emotionally engaged with them, okay? Again, leaving things up to Allah, but being strategic and planning things on how to take care of yourself. So what does self-care mean? I mean, we could do a whole presentation on that. We've done that many times, but your basic stuff, again, self-care, mindfully doing things. So exercising, eating, talking, having your own supports with friends and family outside of that, because you really do need to energize yourself and to be able to deal with somebody who is very burdening, you could say, or very heavy and take a lot of your energy. So it's so important not to engage emotionally with somebody who does have this type of personality disorder. And a lot of folks that I see who do have bipolar, they acknowledge this. They say, I feel like I'm a burden. I feel like I'm taking too much. I feel like I'm hurting my family. And they feel that. And on the flip side, we have folks in our community who deny having these personality disorders, and it comes out in the form of abuse, especially narcissism, borderline personality disorders. Unfortunately, I've seen too many cases within our communities. I'm not saying this as that it's only males, but the facts and the experience shows that it's mostly through males, but I have seen cases of where women have also been the abusers. But we've seen these personality disorders mostly come out through the abuse of male against women and children in our community. that's something that, no, there has to be a very hard line drawn here, whether it's from the sheikhs, the scholars, the community heads, as well as the mental health professionals in our community. It doesn't matter if you have a personality disorder, you're abusing this person physically, emotionally, sexually, psychologically, there is a red line you cannot cross. And this is something in our own religion that says that you cannot oppress another person, no matter what your personality disorders, your mental health issues. If you're going to hurt somebody like that, that's a red line you cannot cross.
I wish the human race would absorb some of these universal ethical principles in a practical way. But sometimes, people are victims at an early age, and then they develop survival mechanisms. And sometimes they even become presidents. We've got narcissistic presidents, The story of Narcissus, as you know, was it's a Greek personality, and who died because kept looking at themselves so much that they didn't go and even drink water. So we have a world of narcissistic people and abusers, and I think the solution is education, and people like yourself, Sister Berak, especially. I know Sister
Anissa
Diab, right? She would be excellent, and I wish she would do more of these training sessions, and maybe our Islamic centers. I know, Brother Amin, you do quite a few of those, but educate. Let's educate our communities. Let's educate our children, our families. So at least, you're aware of what do you say to a person who has these kinds of issues, or how do you even know a person has those kind of issues, right?
Yeah, that's the thing to recognize. That's a huge thing. It's not to be aware, because right away we see abuse without seeing the underlying issues. Speaking of dear Sister Anissa, her and I are actually going to be doing a live this weekend, Ask the Therapist. So after tonight, inshallah, you'll see the promotion for that, so people can join in live to ask questions, inshallah.
We need a lot more of yourself, Sister Anissa, and all those who are, mental health professionals. We need a lot more of your presence, not only online, but
thank you so much. Thank you so much for your support, brother. Really appreciate that.
It's our blessing. So important. It's our blessing, especially Muhajjaba sisters, who are, erudites in their own fields, and it's very impressive. It makes us very proud. Yes. Keep up the great work, and many good things.
That means a lot, especially growing up listening to your lectures, Hajj. So that means so much to me. Thank you so much. Bless you. Thank you so much for the encouragement and the encouragement.
Other sisters to take the same field as well.
Sisters and brothers. And I think there's
we need more brothers. We need more brothers in this field. We've been encouraging people.
But you're right. We don't have enough sisters to represent our communities. I told Sister Anissa the same thing, that during camp, when she comes and she conducts these programs, I feel very proud that we have a Muhajjaba sister who's very educated, excellent role model, knows what she's doing. I mean, the collection is just nothing but a gift from Allah. And we hope many more like that to come, inshallah, like yourself.
Thank you so much. Bless you.
A message from Brother Hussein Baidoun that, because he was the brother in Ottawa, Brother Hussein Baidoun, and he's saying, that
was me.
That was my story. Remember with the kids in the camp in Ottawa? Yeah.
All right, Brother Amin. Last question.
So I'll spare the last question. What I will do, again, I want to thank each of you for your time. We'll just do one, again, go around the table here one more time with any closing remarks, advice for the people that were watching tonight, that were with us, in terms of, if there was one thing you would tell them, to take advantage of, to focus on, this time, in order to stay positive, or again, keep their mind off, or alleviate their fear, please share that kind of closing remark or thought.
I guess I'll start. Just to realize to take your free will back. Your real reality is really within you. Whatever your attention goes, energy flows. And truly believe. I believe in the philosophy of the 18-40-80 rule. Stop worrying about what everybody's thinking about you. At 18, you worry about what everybody's thinking about. At 40, you don't care what anybody's thinking about. And at 80 years old, you realize nobody was ever thinking about you. So remove those judgments you put on yourselves and other people, and really learn how to forgive yourself, really learn how to love yourself, and really, really find your Lord through these stages. take this as an opportunity, honestly. Sister, right?
What you're saying, brother, I live by this now. Problem, reframe, opportunity.
Yes.
There's anything you can take out of the psychotherapeutic talks and chats we had tonight, just take this, because then you can interpret this in your own way with everything that we've said, whether it's religiously, politically, socially, spiritually. Problem, reframe, opportunity.
That's simple.
Alhamdulillah. You know, we're in the month of Sha'ban, and Sha'ban is the month where we have the birth of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, Imam Zain al-Abidin, and of course our living Imam Sahib al-Zaman, Ajallah ta'ala farajah, as you know. And it's a very spiritual month. Right around the corner is Ramadan. We passed Rajab, which was the month of Imam Ali alayhi salam. And so let's take advantage of that. And being at home, let's read more. Let's read more books. Let's read more Quran. Let's reflect. It's unfortunate how few on earth actually reflect on the Quran. You know, Quran is a book that will complain. The Prophet will complain on Judgment Day that it was ignored. You know, Ya Rabbi, inna qawmi ittakhadhu hadha al-Qur'ana mahjura. My Lord, my community ignored this book. So let's not be part of that statistic. It's a month in which the living Imam was born. And they say that when he was born, Imam Hassan Askari held him on his lap. And he was reciting Surah Al-Qasas, verse number 5, وَنُرِيدُ أَن نَمُنَّ عَلَى الَّذِينَ اسْتُضْعِفُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَنَجْعَلَهُمْ أَئِمَّةً وَنَجْعَلَهُمُ الْوَارِثِينَ. It is our desire, Allah says, وَنُرِيدُ أَن نَمُنَّ, to make you the oppressed, the inheritors. You see, and Imam Sahib al-Zaman alayhi salam is reciting this because he is that final wish of God to come and bring justice. So we have to discuss, inshallah, in future discussions, the importance of the belief in the Mahdi. Why all Abrahamic religions, including Hindus, including Buddhists, believe in the coming of the Messiah, right? Why is that so important, number one? Number two, why remembering them, what does it do for us? Like somebody asked me the other day, that is it okay, I talked to the Imam, somebody told me I shouldn't do that, that's being a bit insane. And I said, no, talk to him, it's fine, he's your leader. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala relays it as he wills. وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ عِلْمِهِ إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ. It is God who reveals it. So talk to Imam, because nothing completes this conversation when we talk about self-efficacy, taking control of yourself, holding on in a positive way, declouding the cluttered mind, right? And having clarity of vision. Nothing of that works more efficiently than holding on to the living agent of God. There's a reason why Allah made Adam the first prophet, because without that, humanity is lost. So in the time of the occultation of our Imam, it's very important for us to focus on that, extremely important, because that gives us hope, it gives us direction, it gives us tangibility, it makes things complete, rather than this being who is going to be born, who's not here yet, and we just sort of have to hope in our hearts. No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, in every community, وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْكُمْ. Minkum means among you, those vested with authority from among you. This ayah, Surah An-Nisa, is for all of humanity, but for the believers, وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْكُمْ. أَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْكُمْ. And there's no condition in this. It's a command. It's ita'at of God, meaning you have to obey. So in the period of the 15th of Sha'ban, let's pray to Allah that our Imam reappears soon, so that the injustices of the world can be depleted. These indiscriminate killing and bombings. I was listening to the Florida congressman who ran for presidency. What's his name? The Spanish guy, Marco Rubio, right? And he's saying, China is getting very strong, and when one country rules, a lot of oppression happens. You've got to balance the power. And I was chuckling. I said, well, guess what? That's so true. It's being spoken in Congress, right? Balance of power, because oppression is prevalent. And who's going to balance this power? Not China, not America, not Russia. No country is going to balance the power. inshallah, Allah will bring His Imam among us and will bring justice. You know, أَنَّ مُنَّ عَلَى الَّذِينَ اسْتُضْعِفُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَنَجْعَلَهُم أَئِمَّةً and make you leaders, and He's going to eradicate this problem, inshallah. So in this period of time, let's reflect, let's read up on his life. You know, while it's short, let's hold on to him. He's the embodiment of all the 124,000 prophets. He's the embodiment of the Imams. He is our living agent. And that, to me, is so powerful moving forward in my decisions, so powerful in the clarity of vision, so powerful that when I wake up in the morning, there's a pandemic happening, the world could collapse, the earth could shake, you know, the planets, the meteors can fall on our heads. It doesn't matter. Hold on to this rope and it will never break. I think that's so beautiful. Let's leave it at that. And let's prepare ourselves for the month of Ramadan. This year especially, we have to be very creative because our iftar is going to be very limited, right? Who do you invite for iftar? That's going to be a problem. Our places of worship, you know, have shut down. It's a big problem. We don't realize it, that while we are trying to augment it with this technology, that physical presence of walking inside a masjid or a Hussainiyah or going to the haram of the imams, you know, going to the Kaaba, the best house in the world, it has a cathartic experience. And inshallah, this bala, this difficulty, this trial will move away soon. But we don't know how long it will last and what the repercussions will be. But let's be creative, let's take advantage of it, and let's enhance it. And sometimes reversing the engines a little bit so that we can sit and actually reflect on the importance of this month of Ramadan and Sha'ban. Hopefully, maybe get us sinking deeper into our souls, inshallah. May Allah bless you, Brother Amin, the communities, and all of you for taking this time. Sister Berak, may Allah bless you, Brother Hussein. Thank you very much for your time.
Jordan, thank you so much.
Again, appreciate all three of you again for taking time out of your schedules to do this. A lot of good feedback. People enjoyed this. They said they'd rather watch these types of programs than CNN. So thank you very much for that.
Good news, right?
So again, may God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, keep you all healthy and safe from this virus so you can continue to enlighten our community.
Let's recite the dua, inshallah, right? We should recite the dua, please, yeah. Sister Berak, would you like to recite?
Which are we talking about? Hajj?
Any dua, you know, that I was going to read a short dua for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us, you know. رَبَّنَا اغْفِرْ لَنَا وَلِإِخْوَانِنَا الَّذِينَ سَبَقُونَا بِالْإِيمَانِ وَلَا تَجْعَلْ فِي قُلُوبِنَا غِلًّا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا رَبَّنَا إِنَّكَ رؤوف رحيم وأفوض أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد فوقع الله سيئات ما مكروا لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين فاستجبنا له ونجيناه من الغم وكذلك ننجي المؤمنين. You know, may Allah inshallah accept our prayers and may Allah protect and those who are in the hospital right now suffering from these symptoms, may Allah remove them. You know, Allah is the one who الذي هو يطعمني ويسقين وإذا مرضت فهو يشفين. He is the one who cures us, and we pray for them, whether it's in Italy, in the Americas, in Australia, in Africa, everywhere in the world. Those who are suffering in China, everywhere, people who are suffering from these diseases. Inshallah, that Allah strengthens us so that we can do the work that He created us for. And I pray to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala that we, as Brother Hussein keeps mentioning, forgive each other and show more compassion and love and treasure the value of all life and ensure that its longevity is maintained and that good health is maintained, inshallah. And please, everybody, please practice good, healthy lifestyles so that we can ensure that these kinds of diseases don't get spread. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Fi aman Allah.
Thank you.